Welcome back to Saga Sunday for another Norse Mythology story. Today is the beginning of the story of Thor and Loki's journey to the land of the giants. Many seasons ago, Thor and Loki were traveling together on Thor's chariot, pulled by his two goats. When the sun began to set, they came to a house of a farmer, and the farmer welcomed Thor and Loki inside to stay for the night. Because the family was just simple farmers, they did not have much food to share with their two hungry guests. So Thor slaughtered his two goats, chopped up the meat, and put it into a cooking pot. When the meat was cooked, Thor and Loki sat down to enjoy their evening meal. Thor invited the farmer and his wife and their two children, Thjalfi and Röskva, to join them. Thor spread out the goat skin next to the table and said to the farmer and his family, "Throw the bones onto the goat skin when you are done, but do not break the bones." Loki, who was sitting next to the boy Thjalfi during the meal, said to the little boy, "Why don't you break the bones, Thjalfi?" Thor said not to. "But the bones are the best part. They are full of delicious marrow. What could hurt just to break one of the bones to taste it?" "I guess you are right, Loki." Thjalfi broke one of the bones and sucked out the delicious juices. Thor and Loki stayed at the farmer's house for the night, and before dawn, Thor got up and put on his clothes. He reached for his hammer Mjolnir and began to swing it over the two goatskins, which were full with all the bones. The bones began dancing on the floor, and they started to take the shapes of the two goats. The goatskin wrapped itself around the bones, and now Thor's two goats had been brought back to life. But something was wrong. One of the goats was limping on one of its legs. Thor sat down on one knee and felt the leg, and he could clearly feel that it was broken. Thor became furious in an instant and yelled at the farmer and his family to come outside. When the family came outside, Thor demanded to know who had broken one of the bones. Loki stood in the entrance with a smiling face, looking at the boy. The whole family stood there, paralyzed in fear, looking at Thor, who was holding his hammer Mjolnir while sparks were flying left and right through the air. If eyes could kill, they would all have been dead right then and there. "Well, who did it?" Thor asked again, slowly looking at each one of them. The boy Thjalfi said, almost in a whispering voice, "It was me. It was me, mighty Thor." The farmer said, "Thor, please do not harm my family. You can have everything I own." Dark clouds started to drift apart in the sky, and slowly the singing from the birds could be heard again, and Thor's anger had slowly passed. Thor then said in a calm voice, "I will take both of your children, Thjalfi and Röskva, in compensation, and they will become my servants." Thor told the farmer to take care of his two goats and left the farm with Loki and the two children. They traveled east, and when they came to the ocean, they crossed it. And after many days on the sea, they finally saw land, and here they went ashore. Right next to the beach was a huge forest, with trees as tall as mountains and as wide as a house. Thor said, "Let's go into the forest." After many hours of walking in the forest, it began to get dark, and as luck would have it, they found a very large hall standing seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of the forest. It was a bit strange, because one end of the hall had an opening as wide as the hall itself, but because they were tired of walking for a whole day, they did not think much about it and went inside to sleep for the night in the middle of the hall. During the night, they all woke up as the ground suddenly began to shake violently under them. Thor and his companions searched for a more secure room in the hall, and found one further down to the right. Thor stood in the entrance to the room, with his hammer Mjolnir in his hand, ready to defend himself if he had to. The others stood inside the smaller room, too scared to look out into the hall. And just as the ground had suddenly started to shake, it stopped, and a loud noise began to fill the air, which could be heard for the rest of the night. At sunrise, Thor went outside and saw a giant lying in the forest a short distance away from him. The giant snored so heavily as he slept, and now Thor understood from where the noise came, that he had heard during the night. Thor put on his belt of strength, and he began to be filled with mighty power. But just in that moment, the giant woke up and quickly stood up. It is said that for once Thor was too startled to strike with the hammer. Instead, he asked the giant for his name, and the giant replied, "I am Skrýmir, and I do not need to ask your name, because I know who you are, Thor. You belong to the Aesir. But Thor, what are you doing here in Giant Land? And why have you dragged away my glove?" Skrýmir reached down and picked up his glove. Thor now saw that during the night he had mistaken this glove for a hall. Skrýmir shook his glove, and Loki and the 2 children landed on the grass next to him. Skrýmir sat down and began to eat his breakfast, and so did Thor and his companions. Skrýmir asked Thor, "So, Thor, where are you going?" Thor answered, "We are going to the east." Skrýmir said, "So am I. We should pull together our provisions." Thor nodded in agreement. When they were all done eating, Skrýmir put all their provisions together in one bag and threw it over his shoulder. "Because I take much larger steps than you, it will probably be night time before you see me again," said Skrýmir, while he started to walk east into the forest. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please give it a like. If you want to see more videos like this, remember to subscribe. You don't have to, but it would be nice. Next Sunday will be the second part of this story. So see you next Sunday, and you can check out my other videos in the meantime if you want. Thank you for watching.